Okay, perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. So again, just welcoming you guys to for today for our training, our continued conversation around statistics. There was a lot covered at last week's training. If you were on the call, you know that. If you were not and watched it later, you also saw that. So there's a great deal within this conversation of statistics, how we can be powerful around it, how we can lead our teams into being powerful around them as well, so that there's something of an energy producing versus some the opposite. So we're just going to continue the conversation today. We're going to do a little bit of a review, and then allow some time for you guys to ask some specific questions, something that might clear up something on your end, how you might be dealing with this in your world, with your specific teams. And then again, next week, we're just going to again dive into a little bit more depth about it. So we're just going to dive in a little bit deeper, just building along the conversation as we go. How do we communicate it to our teams? How do we make sure that we're being good about holding an accountability line and things of that nature? So buckle up. We're in for a little bit more with Will here, and excited to keep it going.
Thank you, Michelle. That was great. And so, guys, listen, I'm really excited about today's discussion because it's a continuation of what we've been talking about as Michelle framed up. So we're going to go into some review. It's a little bit more interactive today. So please feel free just to be the first to share, ask questions. There's no wrong answers. Truly, like, just feel comfortable taking a stab at some of the questions I'm going to ask. This is how we learn, right? Just like someone who's recovering from an ACL injury, it's hard for them to control and execute strong contractions initially as they're redeveloping those pathways. That's what we're doing. We're going to be contracting for the first time, or maybe for the first time in a while. So it's going to take some repetition there. And then we're going to open it up for Q&A. So what are you currently working on? This is my seed that I'm planting, is what are you currently working on that you'd like some help with? What are some challenges that you're facing that you'd like some help with? Obviously, there is a degree of discretion involved around talking about these things. So you may not feel comfortable going into a great deal of information on a specific issue in this forum. Although I will tell you that what I'll be doing in the Q&A portion, if you start going into something that I can perceive to be sensitive, is that I will cut that out of the recording and it won't go up anywhere where people can review it. But I would say that there's always a core issue around the thing that you're struggling with that can talk about very objectively, but also discreetly, So for example, this is the first one that came to mind, which isn't true. So Michelle, but like, if I was a partner in a company and I was struggling in that partnership, instead of saying, hey, I'm struggling with my partnership, maybe the issue is getting buy-in from members of the team. Right? Like, maybe that's the thing, is that I want to do X, Y, and Z, and my partner wants to go A, B, and C. And I feel that I'm correct, but it's starting to get contentious. How do I address those concerns? We can still talk about helping people see my point of view and get buy-in to the greater vision or whatever that might be without talking about the specifics. So just to kind of see the Q&A, and it might just be more general than that. Like, how do you implement statistics? I promise you the vast majority of your teams aren't going to listen to this at this stage. We have people watch this for sure, but it's growing. So feel comfortable. Just know that we're going to honor what you say. So getting into that state of mind, just ask yourself, how am I doing? Like, what's new in my work? Like, how am I feeling? Do a self-check. How am I feeling right now? Where's my mind? Am I trying to do 4 or 5 things right now? Am I cramming this in? Am I present? There's no judgment on any of it. I'm just wondering where you're at as you start to get into this training today. So let's kick it off with reviewing 3 concepts that Michelle went over. She went over many great concepts. The 3 that I'd like to review today are foundational in establishing a company where people are clear as to an agreement that they make with the company to help them succeed and the company succeed. So as always, everything that we want to do in leadership boils down to a win-win. We want both parties to always win. And in the seat of leadership that you're in, if you're a leader or if you're a team member who's looking to become a leader, this understanding that win-win is the key to all things. It's a nice, like, colorful phrase, but it's not the main thing, right? Like, it's not just like a flowery phrase. It's legitimately how we operate is win-win. So let's kick it off by reviewing the 4 things that every position needs that we reviewed last week. So does anyone remember any of the 4 things that every position or post in a company needs? Would you guys like me just to review it again? Yes, let's do it. So first and foremost, remember, who can tell me, this might be an easier question to start with. Who knows what an organizing board is? Like Elena knows. Elena, what is an organizing board?
It's where it's like it's a something that everyone can look at to know like who their position, like what their post is and who's reporting up to it. Like who is answering to who, I guess, who's overseeing who and what their role is.
That's right. And you guys have all seen them before, right? Like going to my drawing board here, I'm going to move this out of the way a little bit. Okay. So an organizing board would be like this, right? You have the CEO, and then you have maybe a COO underneath. Can you guys hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay. And then like in a clinical setting, there's a director. Underneath the director, there's a PT. So like there's this general format, right? Let's say that company has more than one location. There's a director, PT, and let's say this one has a PTA as well. And that PT is over that PTA. So this is a general organizing board. And what Elena said was so articulate, because what we do in an organizing board, the reason that's important is because we need a visual of the company structure to understand how communication should flow. So in a company structure, we want to understand when the PTA has a concern, does that PTA go straight to the CEO? And that's a question I'm asking you guys. It's not, and there's more than one answer that's correct. So let me ask you guys, does that PTA go straight to the CEO if they have a question or concern? What do you guys think? No, correct. For most things. Is there a situation, Michelle, that you can think of when a PTA would go straight to the CEO?
And a situation would be if they've exhausted their upline. So if they have contacted their direct report right above them, have communicated with them a number of times and is not getting an appropriate timely answer, or is not getting, the traction on something that they do, they will loop that same person that they've been directing to in a communication that they send up to that next position. May not jump right up to the CEO, but if the entire line has been exhausted and so a problem hasn't been resolved at that point, then we would advise that person to seek that next available terminal, essentially, to that next available person to be able to communicate with. So
that was beautiful, Michelle. Thank you so much. By the way, when I'm doing this little drawing, I can't see people raising their hands. So while I'm doing this, interrupt me, please. If someone's like, and by the way, that's a challenge to all of you. If you have a question or a statement or like, hey, you know what I've experienced, be the first to share. Just start talking or raise your hand and Michelle will interrupt me. So Michelle was spot on. Like the PTA, who do they go to? For most things will be their PT. In a director clinical situation, they might go straight to the director if like that's how it's scheduled and set up to where the director manages time off. For example, they may not go to the PT. It might go straight to the director. But let's say that, and this is so important. I want you to think about why this is important. But let's say they go to their director and they say, hey, listen, I have a concern. And my concern is that I am way too busy. My expectation floor is 60 visits per week and I'm seeing 80. I'm burning out. I just don't think I can do this. And the director goes, I totally understand. Thanks for letting me know. Let's work together on helping you figure that out. And it doesn't get better. And then after a couple of times, the director doesn't seem to really be invested in it. They give the lip service, but nothing ever changes. We tell our people to go to the next person above them on that chain. Right? Why do you guys think that we do that? With 4 of you on the call, 5 of you on the call, you're all gonna have to share a little bit. Why do you think
I'll speak up since I haven't said anything yet. I would imagine just because if you ask the director to go up the chain that they if they probably wouldn't want to, so you need to kind of go above them, but I don't know if that's the correct answer at that point. But if you're not getting the answer, you got to I've seen this happen, and not just here so much, but in other lines of work. I've got a not trying to go into it too much, but I got a family member who's dealing with somebody who has created a very hostile work environment for her, and not going to go into details on that. But, you know, my wife's advice, because my wife does like a lot of HR stuff, is like, you're now going to have to go above that person. You got to go up the chain one. So sometimes if you're not getting what you need and you've tried it multiple times, you've done your due diligence.
Yes. So that's exactly right, Mark. And the other thing that it does is that it also empowers our team members to get the support they need. So one of the things that I remember learning the hard way was that when I finally put a barrier, not a barrier, when I put leadership between me and the frontline team, is I was so focused on just creating that space that I didn't create any immediate like solutions on how they're going to get back to me in case something really needed to be served. And so I would have physical therapists leave, and I had no idea it was happening. And my directors, some of them were new, like this is like a newer director who just didn't know. They thought they were handling the problem with the PT. Like they thought they were handling it just fine, but they didn't have enough experience to really measure how severe this was impacting a therapist. As an owner, I would totally get that because I had too many people leave over the years to understand, oh, when they say these things, I need to really look into it, right? And some things are things that I can't change, but we still have a discussion on that. Like when I have an unhappy therapist as a director, if I'm a director and I have an unhappy therapist and I can see that it's really affecting them in terms of commitment to staying on the team, I have to decide if the thing that they're unhappy about is in alignment with what we can do, or if it's an opportunity for the company to improve. Mm-hmm. So for example, of that PTA burning out, right? Like the physical therapist assistant who's our minimum expectation is 60 and they're seeing 70, 75 visits. And they're like, hey, listen, I care about this company, but I can't do this. This is killing me. Like a director might be like, yeah, I've been there before. It'll be better. She'll figure it out in his mind. Right. Mm-hmm. And this is like a real situation I'm experiencing right now with you guys, is that this actually happened. And then when that person leaves, you're like, what happened? They're like, I don't know. They said they were unhappy about being overwhelmed, but I don't know. I'm like, how do you not know that? Like, as an owner, that's where we mess up, because we're like, how do you not just get that? We should never assume anything. That's why everything in a business is written down and trained. So what we do is we create this safety mechanism of reporting up the org board whenever there's someone who's unhappy. Yeah. And yeah, as a CEO, like if I'm in the CEO position and I have someone say, hey, well, I want you to know I'm really unhappy in my job, I'd go, thank you for letting me know. Have you talked to your direct report about it yet? Mm-hmm. No. Okay, so here's how we do things here. When you have that problem, we want to empower your leader because they have the most power to change it, not me. You know, that's not really what I do day to day. So go to that person and will you let me know how it goes? Send me an email afterwards just going, hey, I met with them. It's resolved. I've met with them. It's not resolving. Could you just, because what I'm doing is I'm training that team member to use the organizing board correctly so I can focus my time on areas that I'm in charge of while still providing an opportunity for them to be seen and heard.
Yep.
So that's the org board, Michelle.
Yeah. So just to speak into that just a little bit, it creates that power of communication, right? That is one of the number one reasons people leave an organization, is because of poor communication. And this clearly outlines that for our team members so that they know how to effectively use that organizing board to find the right lines. Like, who am I supposed to communicate my concerns, hopes, wishes, desires, wants to? And then if not that person, then who else? So it is just a powerful tool for clarity and for communication.
Love it. By a show of hands, who here has an organizing board in their company, regardless of how often you use it? And if you don't know, then you probably don't. Elena, you guys have one? That's great. Yeah. Mark does.
Mark and Lori, okay, at regional, they both do. Missy, do you have one?
No, but I have some students coming starting in January, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is from like 10 years ago. So I'm working on that, getting that taken care of so that gets, redone. So we did have one, but it's like 10 years old, and half the people that are on there no longer work for us.
Yeah. And remember, oh, sorry, Michelle, you're going to say something.
No, I was just gonna say, we ran into that problem because we would get these really pretty ones like printed and all of that stuff. So, I mean, to solve that problem, we actually got like little stickies and then created the org board, but then would have blank space for us to like put the new names underneath there once we grew or expanded or people, went on to PT school or otherwise. So it's a way of solving that printed out massive thing because it changes, it evolves. We grow and people move on and things like that. So go ahead.
Seth, were you going to say something?
I was going to say I've had one in the past, but it's died. It's been on life support. It's been off life support. It needs to be. It's a wonderful tool, but it takes a little work.
It does.
And it takes the team to buy into the fact that it's a living thing, not just a document that's stuck in a book. Mine's pretty dead, stuck in a book right now. So.
Well, and I want to acknowledge you for that because you obviously understand the importance of it and you can see where there's an opportunity for it to fall out. Living documents, like you say, require the breath of life, which is us putting attention on it. So how do we put attention on this? Okay, Lori says that hers could be updated as well. So there's a couple of tips and tricks that like Michelle started talking about that let's discuss this because the organizing board, guys, is second to the purpose, vision, and values of the company. Like when we're as a leader, we're not just like talking about multiple important things and you should just try to figure it all out. Like there's an order to this madness. Step one, purpose, vision, values. Does your company have them? Can they live them? There's always more you can do. But the biggest priority is if you don't have a stated purpose, vision, and values, and sometimes purpose can be called a mission depending on who you work with. But if you don't have that, that's where you always start as a leader, is that we want to create a purpose, vision, values, and then communicate it to the team. This is another living document that requires attention on a quarterly level with a leadership team. And that's how you keep it alive. You make it an agenda item in a quarterly offsite training or an on-site special, executive council meeting. We talk about our purpose, vision, and values, hopefully in every weekly team meeting. And if you don't have team meetings, don't feel overwhelmed. Like just start where you need to go. And it's hard to know where to go when you're really filling in the gaps because that's our problem as leaders. We have like a million things to do. And then you come on these calls and it's like, oh, and we got to get an org board and we got to do purpose, vision, values, like big breaths. And remember what we're doing on these calls is learning. Your goal is to take one thing out per week and do it. That's it. We're going to talk about 30 things that you could do. You're going to do the one thing every week. That's all you're doing every week. Take all the stress off. It's just one action item you're going to implement. So if you don't have a purpose, vision, values, hold off on the org board. Let's learn about it today and the other things, and then we'll come back to it. But purpose, vision, values, get that installed first. If you have the document out there and people are aware of it, now it's time to get to the org board. The organizing board is foundational to anything we want to do as leaders. Like, have you ever been in a position as a leader where you just feel like you're getting sandwiched by all the demands? And maybe if you're a director, maybe you got concerns coming from the top down and you're hearing them from the bottom up and you're just getting squished in the middle. A lot of times it's because the org board isn't totally clear. That's not all it could be, by the way. But that is one of the places we start, is we create our org board. So thank you for sharing all that information, guys. So like Michelle said, the tips and tricks. Another thing you did, Michelle, at one point, I thought you had it printed on a thing where you could use dry erase markers and write people in.
That's right. Exactly.
Talk about that.
Yeah, so we had oh gosh, I think I still have it rolled up somewhere. But it was laminated and it had all of the divisions of the organizing board. Now, when you're young and you're starting out, or even a matured organization, sometimes you wear the hats in many, many different places. So you might find your name under various spots on the organizing board, but at least that still creates clarity for the team that follows your lead. So what we would do was just take a dry erase board marker and write in there like the director, the PTs, and if there was a lead PT that was supporting one of the larger clinics, that was also in there and included. So it's something that could be easily marked off and changed versus anything that was printed like we had previously, or even just the laminated names. So it was a nice way of quickly doing that and changing and creating change for the team to see visually right away.
Yeah. So do we have a template for that by any chance?
I have one, yes.
Okay, let's get offline and see if we can't find a way to get
Yeah.
a template into their hands, because
Okay.
it really doesn't need to be super hard. Like what I would
It
say
doesn't.
is you can just put it in the break room with the 4 divisions and write people's names in and go, okay, this is the org board. And
Mhm.
just in your lunchtime, kind of look at the names and the titles of who's doing what. And it just, and then whenever we teach these concepts, like when I came over here and I did this thing where I am here, when I draw those arrows, it's like, yeah, I get it. Like they just understand and they feel supported. And when they have a problem, they resolve it internally with the least number of people being affected as possible.
Okay.
So
Yeah, happy
let's
to.
look on that. And so what we'll do today is the other thing I'm going to review today, Michelle, is I'm going to go over the 4 things that every position needs, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A.
Perfect.
So every position, so we'll look to see if we can send you a template. We don't know for sure, but if we can, we will. We'll email out a template for an org board. This training would be a great compliment for anyone who's listening to this. Like, listen and watch this video. If you're not on the call live, have your teams do it in particular. Oh my gosh, like you don't even have to train your team. Just have them watch this video and we can send out a template. And then people can, when you hire new people, have them watch this video. Like, right? So what I don't want to do is create a detailed training on organizing boards with all the 7 divisions of a company and all of that today.
Right.
The big thing is to show you what it is in terms of lines of communication and where to go. So now we're going to talk about what every position or post, like, one of these areas that takes up space on the organizing board is called a position or a post. In other words, the job. Every job has duties and responsibilities. You guys all know that. There are 4 key things that we create with every single position or post in a company. And this is the foundation. If the organizing board is the structural foundation of communication and existence for a company, what we're talking about now is the foundational elements that comprise of a position or post in a company. So my question to you, as I'm teaching you these things, and you don't have to answer it, but I want you to be thinking about it, is do I know the answer to these 4 things in my position in my company? So let's take the physical therapist position. This is true for all of them, but we need a name. We need a purpose. We need a product. And we need a key stat. A name, a purpose, a product, and a key stat. So going into this, what is the name? The name is as easy as it sounds. The title. So the job title makes a big difference. So it's okay to be physical therapist. That's great. That's a position. Where it becomes more important is when the duties start overlapping. And in smaller companies, you'll often find that administrative roles wear multiple hats. So creating the correct name gives people in the company clarity as to what they do by simply what their title is. So that's the easy one. is
I'm just
the,
going to give an example of that really quick, Will, if you wouldn't mind. We had a PTA, a really powerful PTA that doubled as our marketing. So the VP PR, so Vice President of Marketing and Public Relations. But at certain times, she was wearing her PTA hat, and certain times she was wearing her marketing hat. And so that was very important to know who and when and who you needed to speak to in that sense. Like, yes, it's the same person, but who are we directing in that sense, right? Are we talking about a marketing aspect? Is she in her marketing world right now? Or are we trying to interrupt her PTA world by entering in with a marketing question? So it just starts to create clarity and lines of communication, when to communicate, and then also the jobs that she would hold. So
no, I love that. As a matter of fact, when you were talking, I decided to add that to my little drawing here. So I added the VPPR post on the company, right? So the VPPR has the same thing. It has a name, it has a purpose, product, and a key stat. Where we get confused in leadership oftentimes is we don't know which hat we're talking to when one person is wearing multiple hats. So for example, in this example, Stacy was our VPPR and a PTA, and she was treating. And she was trained by our coaches to be very clear when she was talking to PTs or anyone in the company from which hat she was referring to. Like in my case, as like CEO at the time, hey, Will, listen, if I wasn't in a meeting that was like for just a VPPR, she would be like, hey, Will, I need to talk to you about something from the VP hat. Like, great. Hey, Will, I've got a concern from the PTA hat. I've already gone to the PT and the director and the COO. Like that kind of distinguishing language helped keep everything super clear. And most importantly, remember, it prevents us from developing our company based off of expectation versus agreements. And that's what we're doing here. We're setting the stage to make clear agreements with each member of our team so that they are empowered to serve you, right? If you guys remember, we went over this last time. It's okay if you don't remember. In this case, the physical therapist assistant, who is their primary customer? Do you guys remember? It's the PT.
The PT.
that's right.
Correct. See, most of the time, and we had a wonderful contribution last week where the normal thought is that it's the patient is their primary focus. Their job is to serve the PT and help and make their job easier and their life easier. The PTs are really there to help support the director. The director is there to support the COO and when the mindset is there like that, that offloads a lot as well. And so we train this on their first day. Like, how do we get people in this mindset? With new people, we always train this on their first day. Here's an organizing board. Here are the 4 things you should know about your position: your name, purpose, product, key, statistic. And then who's your primary customer? When we train everyone coming in like that, it changes people's mindset because they oftentimes think it's reverse. Like, well, I'm here for the patient. How many times have we heard that? This common misconception. Well, they're about the money and I'm here for the patient. Like, no, you're here for your team. You're here for your team because when the team is fully supported and everyone's getting what they need, the patient benefits most of all. So again, have them listen to this training. That might be a useful way, but I will tell you, my world changed when when Michelle came in and she was like, what else can I do for you? I'm like, what? My job has been to keep you happy. Right? But when I was doing my job correctly, I was keeping her happier instead of like satisfying her in a way that like just keeping her subdued or whatever. Like, oh, you're upset, you need a raise. Let me figure that out. I was busy figuring out, how do I solve raises for the whole company? How do I create pay scales? How do I hire better people for her to work with? That's how I supported Michelle when she was there to offload me where she could and vice versa. Like, so it's a really cool experience. So let's go back to the name, the purpose, the product, and the key statistic as we're, half an hour in, and I want to leave at least half an hour for questions and anything else that you guys would like to go over. So, all right. So let's talk about the purpose. The purpose, and I'm reading this off of Michelle's from last week, is the reason for doing something or the goal of an action. The thing one sets before oneself to get done or attain. So the purpose is, here's the real short way to think about this. It's why that position exists. This is the emotional driver of a position.
Mhm.
So the purpose of a physical therapist on our team is something along the lines of like improving lives through decreasing pain and empowering through mobility, something along those lines, right? The purpose of that post is something that's like big picture, and it's the reason why most of your team members have become therapists. So when you're training a new therapist and you're like, listen, the reason our therapists, the position's purpose is to help people get back to life by empowering them through movement. That's so different than like your job is to see 60 visits a week, because that's not why that job exists.
Mhm.
Michelle?
No, it's true. If we go back to our first topic on stats, where we really got to the heart of it, the purpose is our why. That's the heart center of why we're doing it. Not just the company level, but this is individually at each level within the organization. And if you really breathe into that, it can create so much power within everybody's individual role within that company, because they're part of something bigger than themselves. And really beating that drum of the purpose and the why from a heart-centered place is going to create so much change within your work environment and your communities and the patients that you serve. So this is just a powerful way to really spend some time on this. Not like, hey, you're a physical therapist, I'm going to go look up the definition of a physical therapist and that's my purpose. No, like truly why? Like maybe even talk to your teams like, hey, why did you become a therapist? Why did you become a therapist? And develop a vernacular or verbiage off of what your team, already feels they are there to do. So
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Michelle, you hit upon something really powerful, is that we started asking our team members to help us create this. So if this is new for you and you haven't done this before, asking your team to create these 4 things is such a great way to start getting them involved in creation, because what people help create, they participate in. It's so amazing to see when we go. So like Elena, in your case, if you were with your team of PTs in one of your weekly team meetings and a parking lot item for 15 minutes was like, hey guys, I'm going to roll out the organizing board, and you teach that. And then if it's already taught, like, hey, listen, we're defining our roles more clearly. What is the purpose of our physical therapist position? What's our purpose for a rehab coach? What's our purpose for a PTA? And like have them talk about it, and you write down everything everyone says, and then you summarize it, and you come back and you go, listen, here's what we created as a summary of what you guys said. The purpose is blank. It helps people understand the heart set of what we're doing before we get to the point where we start measuring actual success. So the purpose is the why the position exists. The product is what they do. So the product is a lot more straightforward, not emotionally inspiring, but very clear as we're setting agreements in place with all of our teams. The purpose, the product of a physical therapist could be worded a bunch of different ways. Offhand, what I would say is the product of a physical therapist is a patient who has made significant improvement in their mobility and function through decreased pain and treatment, something along those lines. Very matter of fact, patients who are pain-free and able to return to their prior level of function or greater. It would be another version of a product. So the purpose is inspiring, right? So like reclaim life, to live pain-free. The product is somebody who meets their goals and tells their friends and family.
that's right.
Like that's the product. It's something that is just very matter of fact. The reason it needs to be matter of fact is because it has to be measured. And that's when we get to the 4th component, the key statistic. Guys, what's a key statistic for a physical therapist? What do you guys think is a key statistic? What's the thing that they should measure on a weekly level?
Patient visits.
Correct. In some cases, you might even have 2 key statistics. It's rare, but it's true. And for PTs, that is something that we used to do, just as like from a experience share, is that we'd have our PTs measure their own key statistics and their skilled units per visit. We had this discussion 2 weeks ago, if you guys remember. Should we have our PTs measure how much money they're billing out or how many skilled units they use? That's up to you.
Mhm.
But either way, we want to measure how many visits they're seeing and what they're billing out. And like, again, that's just the metric to measure the product to determine if the purpose is being lived or not at a viable range. Looks like we have a couple of chats. I'm sure you've already brought it up. Oh, never mind.
Nope, those are
Lori
some,
already commented.
yep.
So yeah, so those are those components. Yeah, Michelle.
Yes, but look at where we landed on key stats, and if we do this intelligently and in with like purpose, we can show that there's so much more behind who we are and why we exist before we even get to talking about a key statistic. Right? Like there's so much more developed around who we are and what we provide our communities before we even start talking about any numbers. So that's why it's important to know this, to learn this, to go in this more intentional and a little bit more drawn out way of presenting to your teams so that they see all of this behind it before we just, oh, they're all about the numbers. All they want to do is just make us see more visits, and that's all that they really want from us anyhow. Right? So that's not what we want to do. That's not how we really want to operate. And so that's why we want to paint this picture clearly. So if you feel like, oh, I got to get my key stats in, but you don't have a lot of these things lined up yet, take your time. Take that one action. Get offline with me. We can work through this so that we can create a very, very powerful beginning to your stat tracking.
So what I would like help with at some point is just making sure that I do a good job of going over the why.
Mhm.
I feel like we've done a pretty good job of stating, here's our expectations, here's the numbers, things like that.
Mhm.
But I know that can lead some to thinking what you just said. So
Totally.
I would like to do, and I know, and maybe I need to just relook or go over another video again or something like that of, kind of, I know we've gone over it a little bit, but I just want to make sure I do a good job of getting the why down first
Mhm.
and making sure that's, even though maybe we've done it in a backwards order a little bit, but make sure that that's been presented.
Yeah.
Yeah. So listen, it's always about balance, and you're kind of recognizing an opportunity to regulate a little bit more of that balance. So I'd like to turn it over to the rest of you. Have any of you seen, or in your own company or in other companies, a way that a company has talked about the purpose? Like, it doesn't have to be necessarily the purpose of a position, because if you're on this call, this might be news to you or new to you. But like, have you guys ever seen a company that's lived their purpose in a way that you felt has been inspiring in some way, shape, or form? Like, what have you seen? What has your company done? Any shares for what we're talking about?
I know that's something that we really try to focus a lot on. And one of the most powerful ways that we've done it, that I've seen impact our team, was that we actually had a video put together of all of our patients who were willing to speak on the progress they've made or in the way that their lives were changed through the things that our team was doing. And so during a town hall with our company, we played that video for our team to see, like, the impact that we had made, not through us verbalizing that, but through the thing that we all care most about is our patients. And so that was a really cool thing to see, and the impact was just amazing too.
Cool.
That's really sweet. Yeah. So having like the patient information is a great way to communicate the purpose. Mark, do you guys have a company purpose defined?
Yes. I'm trying to remember what that is offhand right now. But I mean, I could probably like kind of get my way partially through it, but I wouldn't state it verbatim. But yeah, we do have a purpose.
And that's great. So the steps of like having this discussion is to first make those statements real. Well, the first step is to create it.
Mhm.
Or recreate it with help. And there's definitely lots of ways you can do that. You can even Google, honestly, on YouTube, how do I create a company purpose statement? And there's lots of really cool videos you can do. Seth, you've worked with Scott Fritz. He's a master of those things. So like you create those statements, and then what step one is create it. Step two is communicate it. So like if you're like, how do I communicate it? What I would say is that the easiest way in my experience to communicate the company purpose, if it's not something that is known, and like in your case, you're a leader and you're aware of it, but it's not like verbatim. Elena, I think you guys can say your company purpose.
I can get through most of it.
Okay.
It just may not sound fluid, but I mean,
Yeah.
I remember the main parts and I could say most of that. But
Sure.
yes, it's something that maybe we need to focus on a little bit more.
Well, and again, what I would say is that's why the weekly team meetings are so vital. When we're busy with patients, we tend to cut those out. And that is the single most important, like if we don't have an opportunity to communicate, there's not space to be with people, to train and to connect, then we will never progress. And so having that weekly touch point is vital for any, and this isn't like our opinion, this is well documented, that any company that is going to grow, it requires a weekly touch point. And that's when we have these meetings. And what's funny is clients that I've worked with who had never done this for decades were like, yeah, I don't know if we can afford to do that. I don't know. And really, I don't know if my team's going to think I'm a weirdo for starting this after all these years. I've had them say, yeah, some of the things we did at first were a little bit weird for them, but now, and this is 100% of the people we work with, when they're consistent with their meetings, they all say like, this is so important because that's our chance to invest in them. And that's where we communicate the company purpose. And so what you could do is have the team listen to my training 2 trainings ago on a purpose, vision, and values of a company. Like you could assign that and go, guys, in our next team meeting, we're going to discuss our company purpose, but I want you to understand what it is first, so that over the course of 2 weeks, they're listening to the discussion, they're hearing and learning about it. And then you come in and go, great, what do you guys think about that? And people who listen will have opinions. And then you kind of retrain it. This is why a company purpose is so important. This is why we exist. The patient visits, the physical therapy we do is the application of our purpose, but it's not the purpose. Our purpose is bigger than that. Our purpose is blank, blank, blank. And so why do you guys think we've chosen that as a purpose? Like having the discussion around it and having people create their own language into it. And more importantly, hearing as a team member, someone else on the team, like saying, I think that's a good purpose because of these reasons. If I heard that on a team member and it's not coming from my leader, it's like, oh, this is about us. That's how we get buy-in, is that it comes, it's weird because the creation is with everybody, even though there's elements that are done without everybody. And so by having everyone discuss it is an incredible way. Then you can really advance it in Elena's way, where you can throw videos. At Rise Rehab, we chose a charity that we sponsored, and we always called that our purpose was to be the light and hope in the lives of others. So we're like, yeah, this is our light and hope focus, is we're supporting this charity called Feed My Starving Children. So here's how we're
Light and Hope ambassador.
Yeah, we had a post in our company that we created. Like, if our purpose is really that important, we should create a position in the company. It was a secondary hat. It wasn't a full-time job.
No,
it was someone who we thought lived our values, and their job was to promote our company purpose, vision, and values. And that person was so interesting because we thought, man, she would be so great. And like, how does she do with that position? Because we were worried, like, are we going to give her more to do and not change her pay? But how did that go?
Oh, it went phenomenally. Like that was actually a really coveted position, I feel like, within our organization, because of, that person just got to pour into anybody that they encountered. So that was celebrating birthdays, that was honoring people in the community, that was setting up events, that was all kinds of different things of just like, how can we pour into people? Like, how can we create light in the hopes of others? She would create videos and things for different like holidays, just fun snippets of how our internal culture was happening at our organization. And it was just, it was a great marketing tool for us to access more PTs into our organization as well. So, the fun that we were having, but the impact that we were creating in the community and in the lives of others that we were treating personally was just really powerful.
Yeah, she was a technician. I do think we did carve out a little bit of her paid time to work on this, but she was the one who drove some initiatives forward. So Mark, I don't know if that answered your question at all. Did you have any ideas or realizations around that? Did you have more questions on that piece?
No, that was good. It it just reminds me of just making time to go over that a little bit and continuing to work to get buy-in. So yes, that was helpful.
Yeah.
Remember,
We have to
guys,
continually, sorry, go ahead.
you're fine.
No, I was just saying we have to continually breathe into these. And if we don't have those weekly touch points, it has to be a way that we communicate at all times, because you guys will be doing a lot of work to create something very powerful in your purpose. And if you just put it into a binder, into a book, it will stay there, right? And it will not create the power and impact that we want within our organization. So it has to be continually talked about and thought of, for it to be as impactful as we intend and want it to be.
Yeah, love that. So yeah, remember, guys, we always have two things going on as leaders or team members, which is a leader position anyway.
Mhm.
We are coping and we're organizing. Coping is all the stuff that you have to do. It's your patient visits, it's your reviews. If you're a director, like, you are constantly, most of our time is spent coping. And so making sure that we spend time also organizing is vital, because it's the organizing that changes the coping long term. It's what grows a company and allows you to get to a place where you can go home at the end of your day on time, stress-free, knowing that everything's been handled. How nice would that feel? No notes. It's the organizing that solves that. And so in these meetings, again, I worry about people getting overwhelmed. So what we're going to start doing starting today is I want you guys to think and write down one thing that you're going to do for the next week on the organizing side. And if you don't know where to start, purpose, vision, values on some level, if you feel like you've got that fairly in, go to an organizing board. If you have that dialed in, then you create each position within the organizing board. So going back to my drawing here, how do you do that? And this will be the last, and then we've already gone into Q&A, but like, how you don't put these things on the organizing board necessarily, but what you can do is you can create it to where you are, let me share screen. Oh, here we go. Forgot how to do that for a second. You guys see that now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the job scorecard. This is a document that you create that goes with the org board that defines the four things. The first thing is the name of the position, but what's cool on this report is that it also in writing says who they report to, and then it also has the purpose of that position. Then you have your key and substats next, and then we won't get into it today, but we create a red, yellow, green, super green component to it that allows people to know when our agreement is being met, when it's in a workable range, and when we should start getting bonused in the green and super green. And so remember, that's the way we create maximum clarity, is by defining these things before people even start. So if a new hire comes in and they know the company purpose, vision, and values, and it's being lived to some degree, at least talked about, and they have an organizing board in their clinic, which you guys are going to create with the template that we're going to hopefully put together for you. And then every position has this one-page document that not only shows who they are, why they exist, but also talks about what success looks like. So that, I'm going to scroll down here. We're not going to get into the details, but literally it lists what success looks like in terms of what they need to be able to do responsibility-wise, the values of the company. It's a one-page document. It defines the four things that we've been talking about this whole time. And so as we get into this, we can see that with that kind of clarity, guys, your jobs will be infinitely easier. First of all, being a member of a team that has those elements in place, purpose, vision, values, org board, and a job scorecard for every position, just having those basics, you do one time. You organize it once. You come back and revisit it, and you find a new way to live your purpose, vision, and values. Maybe you revisit this job scorecard. Remember, done is better than perfect in these cases. You want to do as best you can and move on. But once you have all of those tools, that will resolve the majority of your headaches as a leader. The majority.
Mhm.
Think about going into a review with someone that who's your direct reportee, right? Like they report to you as a director. You're a clinic director. You have a physical therapist that's up for their annual review, and they were started or trained on all this. and they know red, yellow, green on their stats, red, yellow, green for the purpose, vision, values, then then you have them assess it on their own using actual stats. They walk in knowing that they've been at a yellow range across the board. Do you think that person feels super powerful asking for a raise when they don't deserve it? No. The reason people ask for raises is because they don't really know. And then they talk to their friends and family. It's like, you got to get yours. And they Google it. And it's like the average salary is way higher than it is for that position. And they don't know the difference. And they come in pissed off. You start the review because of a lack of agreement on what's real for your position and what success looks like. They come in and then you're managing emotion. And that's why your position is so hard as a leader and so painful for these employees, by the way. They're good people. They just don't know what they don't know, as we don't know what we don't know. So when they come into these discussions, they're already emotionally charged. And then all we're doing is mitigating expectation. And that sucks as an owner, as a leader. Okay, well, you want to raise, but we're already almost bankrupt. I've been in that position so many times. And I'm like, if I lose them, then I'm really going bankrupt. So, I handle it and then I go back to coping. I minimally organize. So the organizing you do, just keep that in mind. So write down something that you're focused on. So we've got 9 more minutes. Any other questions, any support you would like help with? If you don't have anything, I'd like to hear from those of you on this call what your one thing is for next week.
So Will, one of the things that I've historically had trouble with is, and I think I'm understanding that it's an education issue, is trying to apply something, get everyone to buy in without fully understanding, and maybe I'm skipping that first step of why we're doing this, what's our purpose. And now I'm trying to get all this data together and everybody's looking at it like, okay, let's give him 6 weeks and this will die down. And oftentimes it does. Like, okay, he gave up, all right, we won. And so that's the biggest problem I've been having historically. And sometimes it's just easier to do it myself. I love doing physical therapy, so let me get back into doing physical therapy. But at this stage of my life, I need to do less physical therapy and more leading and make sure that we're where I need to be in the next couple of years. So, and I'm the old man on the call, I can tell. All these young people. So.
It's not the age, it's the stage.
That's right.
And you've done some powerful things. You've also got decades of having a successful business. At your stage of business, less than a fraction of 1% of people can say what you can say about your success. So let me just say this. I've had the wonderful experience of coaching people how to implement this for the first time. We went through it ourselves. What I will tell you is that the steps will take time if you have a larger team. But it doesn't really change the focus. It's just how much you can implement at a given group. So like if you've got 5 locations and 50 employees, it's going to take more time to steer this cruise ship, a couple of degrees than it is a smaller boat. Your boat is at a size where you could steer it actually a little bit faster than maybe you realize. And the reason being, in my opinion, is that I've worked with clients about your size. And what we found is that when we come in really strong, with the purpose, vision, values authentically, not as a manipulative tool, but like, guys, I have joined a new group. Like we're version 2.0. I've decided that I am going to do all the things to make this the best place I can possibly make it. Not that it hasn't been there, but like, I want to go to version 2 or 3.0. And this is what it looks like. And I want to make sure you guys are bought into that. Do you guys, can you help me? Can I count on you to help me grow my company after all these years? Is that something you'd be willing to do? Well, sure. Great. And then the first change, let's talk about our purpose, vision, and values. And if you've talked about it before, you reemphasize it in a collaborative way. Why do you guys think that's important? You do weekly team meetings if you haven't been doing those. You spend time every week for a month just talking about purpose, vision, values of your company. Then you talk about purpose, vision, values of each position in the company. And the whole time you're actually creating the org board and the job scorecards with them. And people love talking about themselves. They love talking about their passions. So it's like, gosh, these changes are going to be great. And they're bought in. And once they're bought in, then we can say, great, let's talk about the product. How do we measure the product? And then we roll these things in. It takes time. I think with one of my clients whose name I almost said, it took, I think it was about 8 months of like monthly coaching personally, and then literally every week to implement. I think he could have done it in a lot less time, but the coping he was doing was a lot, but he never gave up. And once it's in, it's in. What's really cool about this, guys, is that I want you to really see the big picture is once you implement these things and the culture accepts them as reality, you never have to do it again. As a matter of fact, that's when group accountability comes into play. That's when they start holding themselves accountable to their metrics. That was a miracle to me to see a clinic of people holding their stats up in a weekly meeting and going like, guys, as you can clearly see, I'm going from yellow, I'm flirting with red. I am freaking out. I'm doing this, this, and this, and I don't know what else to do. And people are like, oh, let me help you. Like you should be doing these things. And that's when like things really take off. And by the way, we're empowering them to take control of their future. We're creating the path and we're teaching them how to walk it. But because they're walking it, they're not being like handheld and like, you need to get your metrics up. The tone changes dramatically. And then we become seen as our true role, which is a coach. You follow? So yeah, very good. Any other questions in our last 4 minutes? What's your one thing, guys? What's one thing you're like, I'm going to do X over the next week? What do you think?
I'm going to dust off my org board, get refamiliarized for myself, and then plan to do some of the things you just talked about so that I can get it implemented gradiently enough that everyone buys in and I'm involved and going to make it happen. So that's a long one, but number one, dust off my org board and really kind of plug it in for myself so that I can then start taking it apart and then putting it back together.
Perfect. That's a wonderful chewable step. You're going to take that out, review it. Missy.
Me too. That was the same thing. Like I said, I looked at it Monday and I was like, oh my goodness, like that is from like 10 years ago. So that was on my list of things to do. So
Remember, if the purpose or mission is so long that it requires any effort in memorizing, it needs to be changed. It needs to be upgraded, not changed, upgraded, because the phrase should be short and memorable. To be the light and hope in the lives of others. Boom. To provide life, liberty, and happiness to our customers. Boom. Like these purpose statements need to be powerful to us as owners and do that. So after you read it, that's what you're doing. You're going to read it and you're going to assess it. What about you, Elena?
Yeah, I know that we have our org board, but I loved when you were talking about having everybody define that in our own way. So that's my one thing is to really touch base with everybody and then define what that looks like and come up with it together.
Cool.
Very good, Elena. Mr. Mark.
Yeah, probably just looking at the purpose, vision, and values a little bit more and making sure that that is something that maybe we go over a little bit more in our meetings. I think the next one we'll have a chance to will be either the 7th or 14th in December. So we got some other things lined up, but just making sure that that's something that is not ignored.
Okay. Guys, please invite everyone in your team to listen to this recording. I think if you guys if you want to talk about, like Seth, from your perspective, how do we introduce these concepts so that they feel authentic and sincere and doesn't seem like a trend I'm going to burn out on? When people listen to this training, think about the topics we covered. Who's your primary customer? Who do you report to? Those two things alone are going to dramatically increase your efficiency around communication and start empowering the team to start thinking differently. Do you guys have any concerns of sharing that with your team? Like when you think about it, you're like, oh no, I don't want to do that. Any worries about that? Okay. I just encourage you to do so because I think that would make your life easier to share some of these. All these trainings in sequence would be great, but this one in particular, I think would be useful in helping getting everyone on the same page quickly and get that buy-in. That's how you're going to do it faster because it won't be coming from you every week. It could be coming from you every week, supporting what they listen to every week, if that's a possibility.
Yeah.
Michelle, final thoughts.
My one thing is I'm going to start working on that template for you. For those of you who do not have a template for the organizing board, I'm going to work with Will on getting that over to you. I know I have one. I just need to dig it up because I just created one with another client of ours. So so happy to do that, and then maybe even getting offline with you, Will, around. I know those job scorecards are so fabulous. That might be something that we can share with you as well.
Oh
To
yeah,
help.
they already have access to it, but we could email it out with the link of this video for
Perfect.
sure.
That'd be
Okay.
great.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
don't we do
those-
that, Michelle? If you'll
there's-
create that template, I'll work on that job. That'll be my one thing is to make
Okay.
sure that template is there. And then when you give it to me, I'll send it out to everybody with the recording.
Perfect.
I really think this is like the one you want to give everyone in particular and say, listen to this recording and here's what we're working on and here's the documents and like all that stuff. It would
Yeah.
accelerate your growth.
Accelerates the growth, but it also speaks to who we are and what we want to be with our team. So it's very authentic and from a heart-centered place. And I know we're at 11 o'clock. So
Thank you, Michelle. Guys, have a great rest of your week. Such a powerful meeting. Thanks for being here in person. And for those who are listening, thanks for checking in all the way through, guys. Have a great rest of your week.
thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.